All right, welcome back, everybody. Another edition live at Drew's house. Hope everybody's doing well. The new year is off and running. I am thrilled about my first guest here today, a man I have admired for many, many years, one of the greatest guitar players out there, the great Nils Lofgren. How are you, Nils?
Good, Drew. Good morning to you. Nice to see you.
Coming to us from Arizona, is that correct?
Yeah, Scottsdale.
It's beautiful. What do you got for a temperature there today?
Well, you know, it goes down into, sometimes we'll get high 30s at night, but it's always up in the 70s during the day. So, okay. And usually it's 40s to 70s as a rule. It's a beautiful, mild winter.
We're trying to get to 30 here in Boston today. So if you don't mind, I'm going to be a little bit jealous here for a little bit.
Look, I get it. I've been spent a lot of time in Boston. Great audiences, but I've been there in the dead of winter too often.
Absolutely. We're just having a good conversation about dogs off the air here. This is pretty good in the pandemic to have the dogs and the animals around, isn't it? Thank gosh,
man. They're our kids. They give us a lot of love and light that we don't seem to be able to conjure on our own in the pandemic sometimes.
And before we talk music, let me ask, how's every family doing okay through this? Everybody healthy? Or?
Yeah, you know, I think we like our son Dylan's down the road 15 minutes with his animals, and we're all suffering from PTSD like the whole planet.
Yeah.
And the lockdown and the madness and all the politics. So it's wearing on everybody, but all in all, we're hanging in there, and me and Amy we've been together 25 years. We're a pretty good team. Kind of handling everything and just dealing. And thank God I have Amy and the dogs, or God knows what I'd be doing. But we're hanging in there.
It was great to see you with your music family on Saturday Night Live there. That was fun to see the band, the E Street Band, get back together and looked like one thing I said, and I mean, I've seen you guys perform for many years now, but it looked maybe something extra special, just something extra unique. Everybody seemed to be just really happy to be playing music together again. Was some truth to that?
Yeah, I mean, we were, of course, a bit rusty, but it's such a, I mean, Amy and I locked down March 10th, I think. And so, to actually get on a plane, be in New York City, where God knows I've spent years of my life on the road and in studios. I mean, I think I had 10 tests in 6 days, thankfully all negative, but they were very, very strict. They had a great bubble, and it was kind of nerve-wracking and exciting, but just playing with the band. I mean, it just reminded me of how much I miss it, and, hopefully a sign of things to come down the road when it's safer.
What's it like for somebody like you who, I mean, obviously an extremely successful career musician, definitely the longest stretch you've ever been, not being on a stage really, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I've been on the road 52 years this September.
Wow.
And I really underestimated how poorly I would handle not touring. I had a year and a half, perhaps, of the best work of my life. I was going to go out end of April. We were going to start with Neil Young and Crazy Horse. I put a new album out last October called Colorado. And I was so thrilled to go on the road because any great band like that, every 15 shows, you just become a better, deeper groove band. And, Neil's the guy who said, let's go do a couple long runs. If we're having fun, we'll stay out most of the year. So I was very excited about that. I was hoping to take the weathered band maybe to Europe at the end of the year. And of course, had high hopes that Letter to You would come out and we might tour all next year, or this year rather, with Bruce. And the whole year and a half disappeared. And I was like, okay, well, we got a pandemic. But as the months dragged on, I really realized how deeply it was kind of giving me a case of the blues. And I didn't handle it that great. Thankfully, Amy, the dogs, and just being busy, helping around the house, it became kind of a full-time job. I was surprised how busy we were in a pandemic, but I didn't get a lot done. There was times where I just certainly didn't feel like writing about it, but what I would do is just play Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Albert King, Neil Young, Bruce, whatever, and play blues guitar, just a little dinky amp in the home. Just play the blues. and just give myself permission to survive a pandemic and not be creative. I know some musicians, oh, I had all this time. I was so creative. I took care. I didn't do any of that, man. I really kind of got a deep case of the blues. So just, I'd sit down at the piano, I'd pick up the accordion, just dabble, just to play and be a musician. But my favorite thing was to just, whether it was 20 minutes, a half hour, just play blues guitar with some of those greats I mentioned.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Weathered there, which, by the way, is just, you sound fantastic on that album.
Thank you.
I've had some really good listens, and for whatever reason, your voice really jumps out at me on that album. I just think you sound great. And it's really well done. A lot of those live, how did that idea come about? So many of those, live recordings, and putting it all together like that.
Well, I've been touring acoustically it's probably been 15, 17 years since I played with a band. And of course, I made Blue with Lou, which was my last studio record, year and a half or so ago. It features 6 songs I wrote with Lou Reed, this beautiful creative soul. And when it was time to play, Amy and I talked about it. We said, look, if there's ever a time to play electric again, it's now. So usually when I tour, I can't get the people that made the album. But Andy Newmark on drums, Kevin McCormick on bass, and then for a swing man, my brother Tommy, who's my favorite. We've been playing together since we were kids in Grin. He plays keyboards, guitar, sings great, has great ideas, and he's just a source of friendship and comfort that, is remarkable for me on the road in particular. We have a long history. And then Cindy, who, had recently been working a lot with Steely Dan, and is just one of the great singers literally in the world. We got to be very good friends, Amy and I and Cindy, on the Bruce tours, Wrecking Ball, Working on a Dream, Magic, and Cindy sang all over the Blue with Lou album. And thankfully, we asked, thinking she was busy or booked, and she said, no, I'll come with you. And we just got a bus for the band and crew. We went to the little clubs, 300 to 500 seaters, and tried to work 5-6 nights a week, and traveled through America and played these little bars. It was beautiful. And I think for me to stand inside of a band, and there were many times, something I haven't done in 16, 17 years with my own music, where the band was roaring and I just stopped singing and playing. And I just sit there and smile and dance around, something you can't do when you're at an acoustic show, and let the band roar. And it was really a gift. And initially the idea came up to record it, and I said, no, I just want to go play and have it be a moment for the audience and us each night, because we jam a lot. Every night was very different.
Yeah.
Tried to rotate 4 or 5 songs. At the end of it, Amy, thankfully, just before we left, said, please just record it. I know you don't want to make a live record. And months later, Matt, the sound man, who did a great job, sent me some roughs. And when I listened to them, I had to be honest and go, wow, there's something special here that I hadn't, in the moment I felt it, but I didn't realize as a recording, there was something unique and special. There's a great vibe with this cast of characters and players. So we mixed it up and put it out.
Yeah, there's something really cool about the live albums when they're done well, that you can some artists try to bring the live feel into a studio, and they try to get that feel sometimes with that kind of band, and you really captured it on that album. Obviously those live shows, you almost have to deal with some of the imperfections. Am I right? I'm sure there's some stuff when you're jamming that maybe you wish you did something differently, or in the studio you wish, but you kind of have to learn to live with it and realize it was perfect on that night.
Yeah, and one of the blessings was I didn't intend to make a record, so I wasn't thinking about it. Oh, we better get a live record because it was like, no, I'm just here. So there's a lot of rough edges, particularly for me, but it's part of the whole vibe and feel and the freedom of being in front of an audience. Because for me, an audience does something to me and the people I get to play with. It doesn't happen anywhere else. And yes, there's great jams in the studio and rehearsals, great moments, but nothing compares to the energy you get from an audience. And hey, it was a beautiful tour, and I'm just very proud we got a live record.
That's interesting, because I've actually never thought about that. I figured you guys are just such professionals. You go out and you do your thing no matter what. But it probably makes sense that if you're like, I think back to like that epic, the live at Madison Square Garden for E Street when they filmed all those shows and made it the big DVD. Do you guys know you're being filmed, and that in the end this is going to be made into something big and epic?
Well, part of being a professional musician is, for instance, in the E Street Band, Bruce says, "Hey, we're going to be filming.
Yeah.
We're going to try to get something live. So, like, maybe for these 3 nights, wear the same clothes, something like that."
Yeah.
But part of the job is to put all that aside. And for me, I always go about 2 hours ahead of the band to the sound check. Okay, let me get my Dale. Come here, buddy.
Again, we're joined here by the great Nils Lofgren, one of the greatest guitarists out there. E Street.
I got my dog, my buddy Dale. Come on, buddy. Yeah.
Dale, he can make an appearance. He'd be like the 10th or 12th dog we've had on the show. There he is. Hey, buddy.
Hey,
Hello.
He's about a 65-pound Queensland healer, red ridgeless ridgeback. See, Dale?
He's a good dog.
Yeah, buddy.
Beautiful.
He's just turned 14 at Christmas.
Looks great for 14.
God bless him, yeah. But so what I was saying is, despite all that other stuff, the job for me is whatever else is going on, yeah, you're recording, you're filming, whatever. The job is to prepare enough so that when you walk out, I can turn my mind off, trust my preparation and trust my musical instincts. And I am not that successful at that anywhere except with an audience. The audience gives you an energy, like you can sense that this might be the only time they hear Badlands in 15 years live. You sense it. They make everything brand new. They keep you in the moment. You take reckless chances, as you can hear on my Weathered album. And if there's some rough edges, they can sense, and I can sense, yeah, but I'm down in it. So those rough edges are okay if you get down in it. And that's, the kind of the beauty of a great band and an audience. I often refer to, people like what it's like playing with a band like, Neil Young and Crazy Horse, or Bruce and the E Street Band, Ringo Starr All-Star bands. I was out with some great bands with Patty, with the record she made. We took it on the road. And, it's funny because Bruce tends to make every night a hometown. It's almost like, I played a lot of football and basketball growing up. And, my fantasy was, hey, I'm going to be in the NFL or the NBA. No, you're not. But I love playing sports. I'm very competitive. And it's almost like you're playing a Super Bowl in your hometown, but you're guaranteed to win. And you're just working on the point spread. Yep. And that don't happen anywhere else without the audience. And the beauty of it is I feel the same way in a 300-seat bar. If people have come to see you, they've got the dog sitter, the kid sitter, whatever. They drove, parked, hassled. They're sitting there expecting you to be good and rooting for you. So it's kind of a win-win if you love to perform. A long time ago, I got tired of leaving home because I have this beautiful wife and dogs and home that Amy's made for us. But once I get out there, it actually makes me have even a deeper gratitude and excitement about, oh, wait, tonight I get to walk out with a band and the audience. I get to turn my cell phone off and put it in a bag and not have it in the room with me, except with my wife. Everyone's okay at home. It's like, man, it's like a home away from home that if you handle it right, it can be very healing and a real spiritual hit that I can't really get anywhere else musically.
That's a great analogy, too, about making every show a hometown show, because it really does feel that way. And I've seen you guys perform in many different cities, and that's the one thing I say. You might always, you might get a different set list. Maybe you like one set list one night better for you versus another night, whatever. But it's never like a lack of effort put in. It's always everything's left out there, which I've always admired.
Yeah, and of course, if you're the band leader, if I look at, it's all natural for me because I love being in a band. I don't have to be the leader. Yeah. I've played in 1,000 bars where I've jammed, and I've gotten up and somebody might say, hey, we're going to play a blues in this key, and I just play. Or someone might say, hey, will you sing something? And I go, okay, let's do this simple song, Follow Me. But, and then of course, as a band leader, you see something on the set list you wrote you don't like, you don't play it. When you're working with Bruce or Neil or Ringo, hey, whatever they call, your job is to make it feel great and special, and they'll handle the crowd. And it's just, I don't know, it's a lifeblood for me performing live. And I really hit me hard how much I missed it this year with the pandemic.
Absolutely, and such a great live performer you are. I wonder it's a good time to ask this question because I've always, this is one of those questions I'll forget if I don't ask it now. There's one song that I thought, and maybe I'm making too much of this, I'll let you tell me. One of my favorite E Street songs that probably the last, 10 years ago, still fairly new in the grand scheme of things, but it resonates just as much now, is Long Walk Home from off the Magic album. And I remember hearing that song on the album, and I thought it was great, loved it. You, some point along the line, you started singing on that song live, just the extra walk homes, little harmonizing with Bruce. And I remember seeing early shows, and you weren't doing that. And later on, in more recent tours, I have heard you become a much bigger part of that song, and it makes that song for me. I absolutely love it. You and Bruce sound fantastic together. And I just wondered how did that happen? Was that you trying something? Was that Bruce? Maybe Nils, you know what? You might sound good here. Try this.
Well, I think it's a natural thing. You know, part of what you talked about too, the song evolves, and every 15 shows or so, you just get deeper into it. You get more emotionally comfortable inside it. And when I have a part like that, initially I try to honor the record. You do that for a while, but you sense with a guy like Bruce, you know, it's almost like he's very hands-off. Great band leaders are, like they want you to participate. So if you start leaning into a part more and you're feeling it, you know, unless they say, hey, you know, maybe that was, you know, a little too crazy of a guitar solo, why don't you pull it back a little? But that rarely happens, and we all have good instincts. Another part of that you'd speak of, again, it was a function of playing it regularly and repeatedly, where I just got more comfortable pushing harder and making my part more of like a lead voice answer. Another part of it, we dropped down, and, you know, Bruce would sing the last verse. 30 shows in, we dropped down. Bruce calls Steve over with that great R&B voice. And he just goes off kind of like a Sam Cooke thing too, on top of what you were speaking of that I did. So those are natural things that evolve in front of an audience with a great band over time and just repetition. Not of the same parts so much, but just the opportunity to get deeper, you know, into the song and the vibe of it with your band.
Yeah, that is cool. And you know, you mentioned the freedom that you get in not being the band leader in this case, but I've noticed you'll take different kinds of solos on songs too. And it's funny, does Bruce pretty much just completely trust you? And I mean, he'll rein you in if he has to, but you know what, Nils is going to make this his own. You take that solo and do what you want with it, or how does that work?
Again, it's kind of a very organic, natural evolution. We were in Europe. I think it might have been Wrecking Ball. We were doing Because the Night, and Bruce was playing this great solo. We were in Spain in a stadium. It was very, you know, ancient. We had this great, you know, gladiator vibe. And we get to the Because the Night solo. I love playing rhythm, right? And Bruce, great guitar player. So we go to the solo, and I don't hear Bruce soloing. There's like 40 nights he played a great solo. And I look over, and he's looking at me, pointing at me like, hey, where are you? And I'm looking at him like, oh, shit. And I hit the fuzz tone and start playing. Night after night, he started pointing to me. And, you know, that's the thing. You learn to pay attention. Once in a while, you get wrapped up in your own thing and don't look at the right time. But all of a sudden, I started playing a solo. And when I was kind of done, I look over and he's go, no, keep playing. No. And it got so long that I finally, regularly realizing he was like, just wanting me to blow for a couple minutes, I started putting some touchstones, not unlike what I did with Youngstown, so that I knew if I was going to be playing 2 minutes, it just wasn't all improvised melodic blues. You know, it's kind of a minor song. And I put some touchstones that I knew I could work through and improvise through, but it would keep growing like this. And sure enough, he kept letting it be a long solo, and I have wound up doing it from that point on most of the nights.
Wow, very cool. I'm actually almost getting chills hearing you talk about that, because it brings me back to some of those live show moments that I miss so much in a pandemic right now. You don't realize how much you miss these live shows, you know?
Yeah, and, you know, Bruce wouldn't say, hey, you know, you're playing kind of long. Could you do something with it? He just let me keep going, so I took it upon myself. you know, you play these 4-hour shows, you get on an airplane, you get to another city, you finally walk in your room at 4 a.m. You're exhausted and you're beat, but you're wound up still for a while. So what I would do is just take a little dinky little recorder, play the chord progression to Because the Night, and just play along. Just, you know, play the blues to it. And if I found some lick that really was special, I kind of make a log, you know, I just tape it on my phone or a little recorder and just kind of over the months build a solo that was a lot, to me, more consistent as far as growing and building over a long period of time.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about another kind of epic concert moment too that I imagine was very different, because obviously these moments are sad and they don't come up too often. But I treated it, I thought of it as you getting a very big honor and responsibility when you were tagged to take the Purple Rain solo right after Prince's death, and you guys came out on stage and opened with that. Prince was obviously extremely well respected by Bruce and the whole band, and you took that solo, and you know, what was that like hearing this? You're going to be the guy on this.
You know, that was very, very strange, Drew. First of all, everyone was devastated that Prince had died. I still remember I was in a hotel room packing or something after him, and there was something on TV. There were some ambulances out front of Paisley Park, and you know, it never entered my mind, because Prince was like a basketball player. He was, you know, the vibe was he was a really healthy guy. I've seen him live, extraordinary performer, massively in shape, it seemed. So it never occurred to me. I thought, oh yeah, one of the roadies, you know, drank too much. Never entered my mind. And we come to find out, you know, a day or so later, it was Prince, and he passed away. Horrible. So the day before that show, Bruce called in the afternoon and said, you know, I think tomorrow night at the Garden, we're going to take a pass at Purple Rain just to honor Prince. So let the guys know. So I called up the guys and you know, the tour manager said, hey, get the word around tomorrow night to be ready to play that. We didn't discuss the solo, as I always do, because, you know, me and Bruce and Steve regularly play lead guitar. We all have, you know, we're all good at it, at our best. And I went over, you know, a few hours early. And just because, you know, just because I knew, and that's the thing I know about Bruce too. A lot of times he may not figure that out until we're sound checking. So just for me, I went over, and found a little room to myself, because I'm usually with 3 or 4 of the band members. Ideally, there's a big room, we're all together, which I love. Anyway, I found a room to myself, got my iPad, went on YouTube, had my little tiny amp with, you know, the Fuzzstone sound. And I just started playing Prince on YouTube, any and all versions, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, just jammed along. You know, I just got into it with Prince, played with him, around him, and just got inspired by who he was as a musician, a writer, guitar player in that song. When we went to the sound check, I walked out, nobody said a word. We made sure we picked a key for Bruce to sing in. He counted it off, we played Purple Rain. When it got to the solo, Bruce just put his arm up in the air. Over on my side of the stage, I hit the lead and started playing. We never discussed it. Sound check ended. Said, that feels good. Let's maybe open the show with that tonight. Never talked about who's going to play the solo. You know, he might have, I watched him. You know, he might have gone for his own fuzz tone. He didn't. Just put his arm up in the air towards my side of the stage, and I went for it.
That is fascinating. Never had a conversation about it.
Never.
That is.
And you know, the thing with Bruce is, I mean, mid solo, he might have walked over and pointed at himself, and you know, we might have shared. I mean, it's him in the moment, and I've learned, because I've been in the band 36 years or so, that you know, there's no really point in asking, you know, unless he tells you. You might want to be ready to do this. He probably didn't even know. We were all so shook up that just to play the song was enough. And, you know, we only did it a couple times, actually in this pandemic, just because that was a special solo. That's something I've played in my garage studio. You know, I'll just put a chord progression down and just play the solo. And I feel like same kind of thing. I have some even better touch milestones. I want to, not better musically, but just that I feel are more emotional or mean something to me. So I hope someday we get a chance to do it again. But yeah, that's when you're in a great band, it's that organic. You don't even ask those questions. Like, hey, if I'm not going to play the solo, I don't have to learn it, so tell me. You don't do that. You just be ready for anything. And there's kind of a beauty in that. And it also keeps you very deeply involved, you know? And it's not the kind of band where, first of all, you know, it's all improv. People don't say, here's a chart, read it, because I can't read, you know, written note, you know, like solo charts. I can't do that. Anyway, that's organically how that came down, and how much of the stuff we do comes down.
That relationship always fascinated me, because I don't believe I have any instances or I've seen Prince on stage with you guys. I could be wrong. Maybe there's a moment way back, or I can't recall any.
Not since I've been in the band.
Yeah.
I know he saw us at a couple shows.
Well, that's what I was going to mention, because he gave a shout out to you. I've heard Bruce and Prince talk glowingly about each other and each other's bands. And I remember Prince talking about the band being backstage, and he was on like a talk show somewhere. And he mentioned how I have so much respect for that band. I watch everybody in the band and how they don't take their eyes off them. And it's just subtle cues and working on the fly. And Prince, let's face it, was known for, sometimes he would say some negative things about artists and not always the complimentary things. With you guys, it was all complimentary. And I was like, oh, what a great compliment.
Well, look, he was a musical genius, and, you know, his body of work lives on. And, you know, I picked up tap dancing as a hobby when I had both hips replaced 12 years ago, and I had to stop playing crazy basketball, which I played about 20 hours a week. And once in a while, you know, When Doves Cry or one of his great, you know, Little Red Corvette will come on, and I'll be there tap dancing in my backyard, which is quite a vision. but yeah, a great band, you know, you get a feel for, there's not often you can take your eyes off Bruce. I mean, look, when he's singing like a long verse and he's the lead singer, you know he's going to sing the words. So maybe that you could look around or check the band out. But you always keep him in your peripheral vision, because he loves to, you know, on the fly too, get inspired and change arrangements that he has no idea he's going to do until he's out there in front of the crowd.
You know, again, we're joined here by Nils Lofgren. Nils, you know, you've had this just story. You've had this dream career in music of to be in it for 5 decades, to make it your career. We have a lot of artists on this show, a lot of local artists who are very kind of like on that fringe. They're still grinding, trying to make it in a lot of these places, and great artists. But it's a tough business, as you know. And this pandemic in so many ways has just really slowed momentum for a lot of bands, a lot of groups. A lot of people are like, I wonder how long I can hang in there for without turning away from the arts. I wonder, think back to those olden days. What would your advice be for the young artists struggling through this right now?
Well, look, we're all, this year has been a struggle for me as a musician, because I underestimated how much the live performance is part of my psyche. Just studying for a tour, getting ready for a tour, that all went away. I had a year and a half of work that disappeared. And right now, you know, I found myself through the year waiting to live, like well, maybe late spring, we'll, like some of the countries, New Zealand, Australia, whatever, get our act together and cautiously, when we didn't do that. And that's another story. But my advice would be, yes, you're frustrated and it is going to slow you down, but don't not get something done. And if that even means, like I said, if you just, instead of, you know, one day, whether it's writing a song, recording demos, if you're frustrated and you're down or you're depressed, like I did, put on your favorite artist and play along, whether it's rhythm. In my case, it's the blues. Again, Albert King, B.B. King, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Neil Young, Bruce, and, you know, or just keep engaged musically, whether it's learning a little piano, you know, if you make demos and you dabble in keyboards. You know, I did that too. I was going to go out with Neil, and I play a lot of piano with Neil and Crazy Horse. So I went online and found some cool lessons and started, you know, just to engage myself, you know, taking a lesson, piano lesson online, just things you might not get to. Like if, you know, you're too depressed to write a song, maybe learn some guitar scales and just play them along with the metronome, just a little bit to improve. Like I got a I mean, for the people that are really, I got a beginner's guitar school at my website, nilslofgren.com, just my guitar school. I got an intermediate school where I think like the Because the Night solo and the Youngstown solo, I take you through every single note of those solos. I think they're 3.5-hour lessons. But, take a lesson, like walk through something and see, it may give you ideas for your own playing, or just simply find a way to engage and play through the depression or the blues. And whether it's your physical health, mental health, musical health, to me, is just think of something that's on the back burner, like learning some scales or some different techniques. There's so much online. There's so much on YouTube that since you can't go out and play with your new batch of songs, or maybe you're waiting to record them because you're, trying to be safe and not bring a band into your home because of COVID, we'll write a few more songs in. Just you might top your body of work that you already have, but don't beat yourself up. Just find something musical to dabble in each day a little bit while you're dealing with your home and trying, to deal with COVID and keep your family safe, just to keep your, spirit in the game through the depression of what's happening.
You might find this funny. You mentioned the streaming, and so many of these artists are trying to keep their connection with their fans by doing this and playing, not quite the same as live, but and one artist told me, he goes, I had my girlfriend and her daughter in the house, and I actually had to stop them from clapping because it reminded me too much of a sad bar when I was done. It was very strange not getting that audience feedback,
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I have these grand ideas of doing these little mini concerts and sharing them, and I just haven't gotten there. I have a couple ideas because now I realize I've got another year maybe of this, and I can't just wait anymore and be depressed and play the blues to Muddy Waters. I just can't do that for another year. That can be part of what I do, but when I made my last album, Blue with Lou, my studio record. Past the 6 Lou Reed songs, I had a lot of songs of my own. Some of them are finished songs I didn't use. A lot of them are works in progress. So now part of my job this year is to challenge me to slowly but surely write another record. And you might have to put it together through the year without bringing musicians in, but just start writing again and just work slowly without a deadline towards what would your next record be. Get to work on it at a pace that you can handle, while I'm helping Amy and run the house, the dogs, staying safe, being very conscious and careful. So that's my challenge this year, is to start writing again towards another record while I, give myself permission to be an amateur musician and play the blues along with the greats once in a while.
And you're the circles you run in. You mentioned you were going to go tour with Neil. Is there a difference, because Bruce and Neil are kind of like, it doesn't get any bigger than those two. I mean, those are the top of the mountains when it comes to these musicians. And I wonder, do you see similarities between them when working with them? Obviously, many differences, I'm sure. But is there like one thing that jumps out to you that both of these guys have this, and this is why I enjoy working with them?
Yeah, totally, Drew. The two main things, neither one of them micromanage the musicians. They trust you to have good instincts for their music. That's why you're there. And they like you to use that instinct and surprise them with some good ideas. Of course, I'll have suggestions occasionally, but and the other thing too is they like to keep things rough and emotional. So, they might, like sometimes we might be playing on a sound check and Bruce might point over to the pedal steel, like, hey, let me hear what it sounds like when you're playing the pedal steel. But he doesn't tell me what notes to play, and it's just kind of a big experiment. And they both love the surprise of improv. Case in point, the last couple of shows we played in Winnipeg with Neil and Crazy Horse in that polar vortex that year, I think 2019, where it was like 40 degrees below. It was dangerous, and I was in South Dakota playing with Billy and Ralphie, just the three of us jamming. We took a 12-hour bus ride to get into Winnipeg. We did 2 shows with Neil in theaters. And we always do a little vocal rehearsal. So we're sitting there singing before the show. And much like Bruce, Neil will write a set list for the band that you will not be following. You know that. However, it's just a concept. It's just an idea of what your leader is thinking. But this particular night, it was about 20 minutes before the show, and we'd done our vocal rehearsals together, which is wonderful to sing together. Neil at the little Wurlitzer, and we do these vocal exercises. And then he looked at us and said, guys, I don't feel like writing a set list. Why don't we just walk out and play whatever comes to mind? Now, that is very brave and possibly foolhardy as a band to walk out with no idea what you're going to do. But it speaks to the confidence and the, everything I talked about, that in front of an audience with committed musicians that have a great body of songs. It all works if you're down in it together, and that was a beautiful moment. But they both are famous, and I love that about them, that if you just keep your eyes on them, you never know what's going to happen next.
Is there one big difference that jumps out to you, or are they more similar than different?
No, a lot more similarity. I mean, the obvious difference is, they're both great singers with different sounds to their voice and their guitar style. But the commonality is so significant of what we just discussed that, and that breeds a comfort in me, because I can't read charts. Someone said, oh, you can play with your favorite artist, but here's the lead and you have to play at the same time. Well, I'm not the guy. Let me give you a couple guys you can call. Because I left classical accordion playing, which I studied classical accordion music for 10 years, the written note. And I fell in love with the blues, just improvising rock and roll, never thinking I'd be a professional musician. Now 52 years later on the road, I still, that improv thing is the whole point of it. And knowing that I got a gift from my parents' DNA and some higher power, God's okay with me. I don't like any organized religion, but I'm spiritual. I believe in some higher power. And whatever gift I got, I've learned that if I prepare enough and kind of turn my regular mind off and trust my musical instincts, I come up with pretty good ideas on the spot. And that's, given me this beautiful 52-year professional life. And, I didn't ask for that gift. So I'm very grateful for it, and I'm trying to caretake it best I can.
You're doing a good job. Final few minutes here with the great Nils Lofgren. I don't know if you remember this, Nils. Last time we talked, and it was over the phone, so you didn't get to put the face with the name, but it was, I remember calling you, and you were at a Boston hotel room before that epic stand at Fenway Park the last time around, and those beautiful, we got some great weather in Boston, unlike what I'm currently sitting in, but it was a beautiful couple summer nights in Boston. I had talked to you in your hotel room over the phone before those shows, and you had some it struck me how great your memory was of Boston and playing some of the old Paul's Mall back in the day, and
Jazz Workshop.
Yeah.
There's so many great plays. I loved coming through Boston. I mean, of course, I've been up and down that Northeast corridor and the Jersey Turnpike probably more than anyone who ever lived in New Jersey, except maybe the East Street Band. But, way back, Amy and I have been together 25 years. She's from West Orange, New Jersey. 15 years before the 25, I saw her at the Stone Pony, and I thought she was great. She hung out with me, and I had to go to Boston at 6 a.m. Like, come to Boston. I'll put you on a train or plane tomorrow. She wouldn't go to Boston. And I remember, it's funny, Boston, you got to come to Boston. And I didn't see her for 15 years. And then 25 years later at a club here in Scottsdale, the Rockin' Horse, I was doing a show, had to go to San Diego. She walked up, said, hi, remember me? We were both at the end of divorces. And thankfully, I had a second shot at it, and we've been together ever since. But, I remember playing one of the more memorable nights with Patty's second or third band. We played a show in Boston, Paradise, at the Paradise.
Well, there.
Yeah, fabulous. And there's just so many. What is it? South Street that had all those little bars going up and down it. The Milky Way, or what was it? Oh man, there's so many great, and just walking around the city itself, it's again, all these places have become a home away from home, and I do miss them terribly, and look forward to getting back. Whenever it is, I have to stay patient and stay healthy, like we all do, and get back to that. Look, music's the sacred weapon for the planet. Literally, it's like billions of people turn to music every day. For healing and community. And thank God for all the bad things about the internet, and there's plenty. thank God for YouTube, Zoom. I don't even know what I'd do without that, just to connect with people. And I found myself through the year getting very disembodied by all this and started calling friends, reaching out. And I realized there's a lot of people when I'm on tour, like half my life, there's a lot of people in Boston or towns that I'll pass through that I just, oh yeah, I'll meet you for a drink on my day off, or I'll see you at the show a little bit afterwards, we'll have a visit. All that went away. Yeah. So one of the other things too, we all got to guard our spiritual health through this and call friends, call people, and just try to stay connected in other ways so we can get back to a little bit more normalcy.
I kind of see this, I've seen it in Bruce's interviews that he's done when he released Letter to You, and I see it in you too. It's kind of this scary drive that when we come out of this pandemic, you guys are going to be full throttle in a way that I can't even imagine you could take it to another level, but it seems like there's this anxiousness, this desire to just play like nothing else. Man,
the gratitude and the missing of getting to play for people, I imagine, we all take care of ourselves. When that day comes, I'll be levitating. I will literally be levitating with joy and gratitude to get back to performing, because I knew it was my favorite part of my job. I didn't realize how deeply my psyche would miss it until this year.
How flattering is it to you? I've been noticing this, especially maybe it's just having more time to be on social media these days in a pandemic, but how flattering is it to see all these really great younger artists? I noticed Jason Isbell's very active on Twitter. I noticed a lot of these guys will notice, say to look at that Nils Lofgren, unbelievable solo, one of the best out there. It must be kind of cool to hear that from some of the younger artists that are, not that Jason's a kid, but you know what I mean? And there's a
but of course, and I realized a lot of that. Look, even when I made the Weathered album, after the show in these little clubs, I go out and I sign CDs, T-shirts, whatever you want, ticket from 40 years ago. I'd like you to check out a CD of mine, but if it's an old Neil Young ticket or whatever you want. And almost without, I didn't know you wrote songs. I just came because you play guitar for Bruce. Or I just came because you were in Crazy Horse. And I loved it. I'd like to get your new CD. And I'm like, God bless you, And Jason, it's funny. I bought his last album. I loved it. And, I let him know, too. Brilliant record. And, of course, I know how that feels, especially if you have maybe the best record you made, enormous world tour planned, and it all disappears. And in my own way, at the end of April, I had months of work with the great Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And Neil said, if we're having fun, we'll stay on most of the year. It's like, oh my God, we're going to have fun. I'm going to make sure of that. And then I was working on trying to take the Weather Band to Europe at the end of the year, knowing Bruce was going to spend all of this year, maybe, possibly on the road. And I was getting greedy. Like, oh my God, I'm 69, working on my 70th year, and I got the best year and a half of work ahead of me. Poof, it's all gone. So I relate to a guy like Jason who makes this beautiful record, has this world tour planned. Poof, it disappears. And I admire it, not just him musically, but like my wife, Amy, who's a fierce Twitter warrior and is fighting all these people that think democracy is a bad idea somehow. And, think racism is quite fine, Mm. And Jason's like that too. He does it with a sense of humor. He's not afraid of it. I really admire that. Not just the musician part of it, but the part to not be afraid to say, hey man, we're all in this together. And, this experiment in freedom requires equality. And we're not there yet. So let's not step backwards. We got to go forward. And, Amy's kind of inspired me to speak out a bit more on that too. But I really admire that. And I cautiously feel like we're on the verge of, some of the fruits of that hard patriotic work with people really coming down on you and after you, which I've worried about her sometimes. But very fierce people like Amy and Jason out there speaking the truth. And I'm hoping we're entering an era of sanity and true democracy for all that we've never quite gotten to yet as a country.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's tough to, and even in family atmospheres, it's tough to avoid the political discussions these days. But I'll ask it in a different way. Have you ever been a part of a band? Because I know if you're going to be a band, you kind of got to all go in the same direction. And I'm guessing not everybody. And I mean, the E Street Band has. I mean, it's been growing ever since I've been following. It's getting bigger and bigger. I mean, the core, but the backup singers sometimes, and there's a lot of people on stage, and I'm wondering, they can't all have the same political beliefs, right? But I mean, maybe in general you kind of do. But what do you do as a band? I mean, have you been in bands where the drummer really doesn't believe what the lead singer is singing about, but he's going to drum away anyway? Like, how does that whole dynamic work?
Well, it wouldn't be that far. I've been blessed to be in bands where everyone was on board to present the music from the heart and believed in the singer, the writer, and the band leader. And that kind of has allowed for some different political views. At this point, I think it's either, humanity, democracy, or dictatorship and evil. I mean, to me, it's gotten to that point now. There's no gray areas. But I've been blessed to not have to take those jobs or not have to wrestle with that issue much. Yeah, I have some friends I've lost that I'm not happy about. I have some friends that we're cautiously kind of putting up with each other's different views. And we'll have to see where that goes.
There's a lot of that going around.
I know. I mean, it's heartbreaking. But, at this point, I just don't see any gray areas anymore.
It is a crazy time. Well, it's a crazy time for so many ways, never mind a pandemic. Nils Lofgren, thank you so much for doing this. We always end the show with some quick rapid fire. Can you answer the first thing that comes to mind? Do you mind doing it?
Oh, Lord. Drew, I had a ball. Thanks for spreading the word on my new live album, Weather. God bless all you people out there that keep coming to the shows. We miss you, love you, and grateful. And stay safe, take care of yourself, so we see you down the road. I'll do my best with the rapid fire.
All right, I'll try to keep it fairly simple. Although I know it can be tough. Biggest musical influence, the one that just whether you were a kid or what? Who's the one that comes to mind?
Beatles.
And then you get to play Ringo. I mean, come on, this is a
look that blew my mind to be in the first '89 band and the '92 band, and even that's a good story. Ringo called me at home. I met him on the Born USA tour. We became friends. He would come see me play in England, where I played every year. And I lived in LA, so did he. He had a home there. In 1989, he called, said, hey, I got to be a musician. I've got money, I've got fame. I was in the Beatles. I can't follow the Beatles. I have to find a way to be a drummer. I've got this idea for an all-star band. My friends, we all take turns singing 2 or 3 songs. I get to drum. I get to go out front. I want you in the band. And I'm like, oh, my God, you got to be kidding me. Here's when we're going to rehearse. Think of a couple of your songs you want to do. And I was on cloud 9, freaking out. I was going to play with Ringo in a band for months. And I went to say goodbye and get ready. And he said, wait a minute, don't you want to know who's in the band? I said, well, you're in the band. I said, yeah. But that's enough for me. And he laughed, but I meant it. But then he says, well, you and Joe Walsh are playing guitars. Billy Preston's playing organ. Dr. John was playing piano. Levon Helm and Rick Danko are playing and singing. Jim Keltner's our full-time drummer, one of the all-time greats. And your buddy Clarence Clemens is on sax. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. But they all said yes, and we went off for 4 months, and one of the great bands of all time.
Unbelievable. Have you ever been up to the Levon Helm barn up there in Woodstock?
No, and it's one of my deep regrets. I got to be very close with the whole band, and Levon and I would talk regularly. I loved Levon. He said, Nils, you got to get out here. And of course, I'm out west. He's in Woodstock, and between friends, family, dogs, stuff, me on the road, coming home, not wanting to leave home again. And I always thought, well, I'll get there. Then we lost Levon. One of my regrets that I didn't do that, but he remained a dear friend, always would take my calls. I'd always visit with him after the show. Levon was great. After every show on the All-Star Band tour, he always called. I would never miss it because it's Levon Helm. I go up to the door was open. He'd always pick up and call room service, say, send me 2 of everything on the menu. No, everything, 2 of everything. And he'd just stay up till 4 or 5, have people come in and out and visit. And of course, I always went up just to hang with him. God rest his soul. What a musical giant.
Man, you know, it's funny. I went up to that barn venue, does live little concerts now. And there was a bunch of guys that had played with the band, and Dylan toured in various different roles that were all coming together for a show. And it had been sold out for like a year. And I was just happened to be in the area. We got an Airbnb. My wife and I were hanging out in Woodstock, a town we'd never been to, thought it was cool. And I looked and I said, oh man, that's the barn. It's 2 miles away. And look what's going on tonight. So it's like, it's not a thing where you get tickets or anything. Like, you know, you can't get tickets at the window or anything. So I drive up and you literally you don't even get out of your car. You drive through. And I said to the woman at the stop, I'll be completely honest with you. We don't have tickets. We didn't sign up. I'm just curious if there's any way to get into the barn for this show tonight. She goes, wait right here. Comes back and says, 2 people 3 hours ago came by and said they couldn't make the show. Just make sure you give these to somebody who really wants to go. These are yours. And I was like, what a night. A great concert night.
Oh man, how beautiful is that? It reminds me of a great story. You know, the E Street Band would rehearse in, you know, the Mecca, New Jersey, Asbury Park at Convention Hall. And it was in the dead of winter. I even forget what tour. And we started just before we hit the road, we do some rehearsal shows in Convention Hall. Funky, drafty, but we do like 3 nights to actually play in front of an audience. And of course, it only holds a few thousand people. So everyone wanted to be in there, and tickets were impossible to get. And my wife, Amy, who always liked to do this, she got a couple tickets, put in her pocket. She walked across to one of the bars in Asbury Park. She was sitting there having a sandwich. She's very independent. And some guy walks up, gets on the stool, and he's visibly like moaning and groaning. Oh, he just to himself. And she said, what's wrong? I said, man, I did this, I did that. I've been looking for it for weeks. I thought I could see this show. I missed out. I can't get a ticket. Give me 3 doubles. I'm miserable. And she just looked at him and said, here you go.
Oh,
he looked at the ticket, looked at her like, what? Yeah, have a good time. You know, that's the beauty of getting to do that, you know. But Amy knows that because she loves music. She's not in show business, but she's my partner. She does all our merch, designs the shirts. When we go to England, because we're on a bus, not airplanes, she'll come and work the merch table. She's down the table. I'm sitting there signing. She's selling. And we miss that, you know, getting on a bus and going from town to town. That's another home away from home is the UK. So we hope to stay healthy and get back to all that good stuff.
Good job by Amy. Man, what a story that is.
Yeah.
Hey, we were talking about Ringo. I have to ask, it feels like the strangest concert moment of all time for me to have Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, joined by Paul McCartney, and have the plug be pulled during a show. What the heck was that all about?
You know, I will tell you my perspective is you're in a Hyde Park. There's a lot of animosity between the town and the rich people that live in the neighborhood about noise. And they go back and forth. Promoters make a lot of money for the city. It's good for the city. So here we are doing London Calling, and Paul's coming out to sing. And we all grew up with the Beatles. I mean, we're like kids in musical heaven. I remember, you know, we did a song, I Saw Her Standing There. And then Bruce asked Paul, hey, why don't we do how about you join us on Twist and Shout? And, you know, Paul had his back to me looking at Bruce. And all of a sudden, Paul turns around and looks at me, goes, what key? And I go, C. And then Bruce, 3, 4, and we're doing Twist and Shout. So we do that. And afterwards, Bruce, it's just such a euphoric moment for band and audience alike. I mean, here's Sir Paul McCartney of the Beatles, to me, the greatest band recorded music in history. And Bruce said, hey, why don't we let's do another one for Clarence. Let's do a 10th Avenue Freeze Out. And Paul's like, yeah, let's do it. All of a sudden I see the road crew running out, Monty, the Monitor Man. And I realize he's got this panicked look on his face. And what happened was the promoter, the noise, the curfew, right? The noise regulation was coming up. And he's been warned by the city, if you have music past this moment, you will get like a 200,000 pound fine or some insane. So, I'm looking at this going, well, surely with Sir Paul McCartney of the Beatles and what we've done, this 2-hour brilliant show, after a long day of great music, the audience is there, the park's packed. Surely you get on the cell phone, right? And you call the city. You say, hey, Paul McCartney wants to play another 10 minutes with Bruce Springsteen. Can you waive the penalty? Surely you know who to call to get permission. They didn't get it done. And in a panic, they pulled the electricity. They pulled the electricity. Oh, my God. And we're all sitting there, you know, Bruce like, what? What? I mean, nobody goes out and tells Bruce Springsteen and Paul McCartney and the E Street Band, you must stop playing now. We all went through that at the teen clubs in the 60s. I know Bruce did. The principal, the teacher in charge, like, hey, it's 9:30, plugs out. And they pull the, that's all happened to us. But at Hyde Park, with London Calling, with one of the Beatles, with Paul McCartney and Bruce singing, and
you still can't believe it. You still can't believe it.
And so the PA went dead. There was still power to stage. So Bruce went up instead of, you know, going into, I mean, it startled all of us, right? But, you know, he's the ultimate performer. And it was such a good vibe all day long, finishing with our 2 hours, that rather than kill the vibe, he just said, well, hey, they pulled the power on us. So, and he's saying, good night, Irene.
Yeah.
And another great story, Drew, it's called the fast out. You know, you rush into the cars and leave so you don't get stuck there for an hour and a half in traffic, right? So we're all like, what the hell just happened? So anyway, now the tour manager, okay, that's it. We can't play anymore. Power's out. We get in our vans. We're all like laughing and raging at what just happened. And we're like, let's go. Let's get out of here, right? All of a sudden, Amy and I are sitting there in our little, VW van. And I see Bruce walking by. And he's just looking at us going like this. Like, what the hell's going on? All of a sudden, they open the door and says, hey, we didn't get out in time. Cops say we got at least an hour wait. We can't go anywhere. Go back in the dressing room. So we all file back in the dressing room, and it's almost, we all realize it at the same time. There's Paul McCartney, who literally is responsible with the Beatles of all of us being there and having the life we've had. He just played with us for half an hour. We got the plug pulled on all of us, which I'm sure happened to him in the clubs in the early 60s. And all of a sudden we realized, wait a minute, Paul McCartney's stuck in this little room with all of us. So we start our Q&A. Hey, Paul, what about this song? Hey, Paul, what did you do? And he laughed and we laughed because he knew we couldn't help ourselves. We've got Paul McCartney hostage for at least an hour in our dressing room. And he just played with us, and we did good. So he's going to be a good guy, which he is. And it was just another beautiful moment out of the wreckage of the power pole that, you can't make that stuff up.
Oh, my God. I'm so glad we went there. That's a great story. Fantastic. Final two. Favorite venue to play in all the world. What's the place where you're just, I love this place?
Well, because I told you about winning the Super Bowl, working on the point spread guarantee to win, I don't know if I can pick one place. If you make me, I'll say San Siro in Italy.
Okay, interesting. All right. Favorite? Can you give me a favorite Boston place for the local flavor?
Yeah.
We'll count Foxborough and all those places, some of the bigger places.
You know what? I've had so many big shows, but man, I'll say, this will freak everyone out, but I'll say the Paul's Mall in the old days.
That's actually
the early 70s.
That is a common answer.
So many great shows there, and there's this dive, seedy bar. Back then, I was drinking heavily, and I just walk up and down the street and bar hop, kind of sipping, like, wait till your show's over to get really hammered. But it's just fond memories of a really pure time where there was no video, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. And so you weren't all like connected to a million people. You just, hey, my job is to do a good show for 300 people that show up tonight. And that's all I need to deal with right now. And those moments were very precious and special.
I know you don't feel the pressure to maybe as a kid, to make it in the business, but is it playing with Paul McCartney? Is it Prince watching you backstage? Is it the early days? This is a big album we're touring behind. Is there one moment in your career where you've been like, this is a pressure-packed gig we got to be on, when you really felt that pressure?
You know, because I grew up with a gift I didn't ask for, and I found out that performing is like on stage in front of an audience. Like if somebody, you know, says, hey, an actor, it happened to me once at Meriwether Post Pavilion. I went to see some great band, might have been, who was it? It might have been Hendrix maybe, and Freddie King was the opening act, right? Freddie King, great blues guitar player. All of a sudden, a promoter, who, you know, I'm a local guitar player, said, hey, paging Nils Lofgren is in the audience, because I had asked for tickets. I go back, he said, look, man, Freddie King is stuck. His bus broke down. There's no way he's going to make the show. He's supposed to go on in 15 minutes. Can you walk out alone and do a half-hour set?
Wow.
And I said, sure, give me a guitar. See, that's the kind of thing. I didn't learn that gift. I was given it.
Yeah.
I didn't fake it. So all these places, I mean, I got to say, the giant San Siros and all those gigs, and the stadium, Ullevi in Göteborg, Stockholm, all the big stadiums. I love it. My dad's from Sweden. My mom's Sicilian. You know, I'm so at home in those countries. But anywhere in Europe, I'm at home. I love Denmark and Holland. I've spent so many months of my life, years of my life in Europe playing. But I will say, when you walk into a place like Paul's Mall or the Cellar Door in Washington, D.C., or these tiny places where like there's 300 seats and the balcony and everyone's on top of you, it's actually easier to get down in the music because they're right there. They're at your feet. You can't, you know, the front row's 100 feet away in a stadium, which is actually harder to just get down into the music sometimes because it's a spectacle. But in those little clubs, man, the people just suck you down in the music right away and kind of hold you there for the whole night. That's why I have, you know, those fond memories. I can't just pick one. I will say when Grin, we opened for everybody. You know, again, that was the only promotion. You were the opening act. The record company would help you tour and charge it against your royalties. We didn't care, you know. And we opened 3 nights for Jimi Hendrix Experience in California. One night was my 19th birthday. And I have to say, with my little trio Grin, Tommy, my brother hadn't joined the band yet, to walk out and open for Jimi Hendrix, I felt pressure in the sense I wanted to honor the opportunity. I was young, I was learning, but it was Jimi Hendrix, my favorite guitar player. Seeing Jimi was the night I saw Jimi Hendrix live was the night I decided to try being a professional musician.
Wow.
The Beatles got me off of classical accordion and turned me on to all rock and roll. And, you know, but Jimi was a guitar player. When I saw him, like, oh my God, I think I need to try that. So when I opened for him on my 19th birthday, we did a good show. And then David Briggs, Neil Young's producer, who I moved in with when I was 17 in Topanga Canyon. And him and Neil Young were my 2 greatest mentors. At 18, I did After the Gold Rush album with Neil and David producing. But David, who was always at the gigs when he could be, said, hey, it's your birthday. You're opening for Jimi Hendrix. You're going to go say hi, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? I can't say hi. I said, well, it's your birthday, and you got an all-area pass. And he egged me on, and sure enough, thanks to David, I went on my birthday, knocked on the trailer door. Jimi Hendrix answered the door. He sat there all, you know, just smiling and grinning at me. I said, Jimmy, I'm your opening act. You're the reason I'm a professional musician. You're my favorite guitar player. I can't thank you enough for the inspiration. And I just shook his hand, and he just kept grinning at me and nodding, being polite. And before I made the mistake of saying, can I come in for a half-hour guitar lesson? I said, have a great show. And I closed the door and walked away. And that was a pressure gig. And I felt like, well, my band did a good job to honor Jimi as an opening act. He wasn't there judging me. We were judging ourselves. And that was the end of that night on my 19th birthday.
Jesus, Jimi Hendrix on the 19th birthday. What'd you do for the 20th birthday?
I was on the road, brother. That's it. You know, 52 years now. God knows how many shows every year. And again, it's a home away from home. I miss it. And God willing, we'll all get back to it soon.
And we'll end with this. I know it's been a tough year for so many. This industry, the music industry, has lost a lot of greats. I think probably John Prine was maybe one of the first ones. But it's just been a tough year. Just reflect on that a little bit. I know musician to musician.
Yeah, it's been brutal. And even before the pandemic, Tom Petty, my wife and I love Tom Petty. We both loved him before we met each other. And probably one of the last tours Tom did as an opening act was opening for me in '77 in England. We did a whole tour together, and I was like, who the hell is this? These guys are great. And it was like we rivaled each other, we pushed each other, and both bands were great every night. But I always went to see them play. And they didn't have a show in Phoenix. So Amy and I called Benmont, who's an old friend. I mean, I got to know them all on the road. But Benmont hooked us up to come to Denver and see him at Red Rocks. And, it was this great night at Red Rocks. Started raining. They pulled the band off. They put the band back on after the lightning stopped. Beautiful night. We went back to the hotel, had drinks, got to say hi to everyone, including Tom, and never thinking it would be the last time we'd see him play. And man, when we lost Tom Petty, every day, me and my wife would walk around the house cursing, yelling and cursing, like, God damn it, Tom Petty's gone. Fuck. And it was like, we still do that because it meant so much to us, his body of work. And we'd never miss a show. And, always, be grateful Benmont hooked us up to get to Denver and see them their last tour. But stuff like that. I mean, really, I still remember being in my mom's kitchen visiting on Wilmette Court in Bethesda when I heard that Jimi Hendrix died. I'm still not over that. And then, the whole album Tonight's the Night was a Wake album Neil wrote. Danny Whitten, the heart and soul of Crazy Horse. I joined Crazy Horse to make the first album with Jack Nitzsche, and Ry Cooder guested on Bottleneck. And this beautiful record featuring Danny Whitten, who was the heart and soul of Crazy Horse. And we lost Danny. Yeah. And then, all of a sudden, Jimmy, Janis Joplin, The Door, Tim Hardin, great folk singer. I saw it at the Cellar Door and drove around town for a few days. And that was truly a Wake album. And somehow, the commiseration of like shooting pool and sipping tequila from dinner time to midnight, then we'd record through the night. A completely live album, anti-production. No one fixed a note, all live. And look, I've had my blessings. I'm still around, and the losses have been brutal, but in the spirit of all those we've lost, man, take care of yourselves and get ready to get out and play again, because it's a true gift. And the audience is much of a gift to us as anything we could do for them. So hopefully we'll all get back to that.
That's sweet said. I can relate to you about the Tom Petty. My cousins, I'm in my almost mid-30s now, and my cousins and I still talk about, some have started to have kids, I have not, but we've actually talked about how, I just took that for granted. Like, I was expecting to take my kids to go see Tom Petty and have them be able to see some shows, and it's kind of, that was just such an abrupt loss, it felt like. And that was a tough one. Pre-pandemic, as you mentioned. I was not going to go to the last Tom Petty show in Boston. I was going to go to Maine to see the family. I'll tell you this quick story because I've kept you much longer than I promised.
I got to get to my dogs. Go ahead.
But I was going to go up to Maine to go see Tom Petty, and I decided to go to the last Boston show he ever played here because he was touring. People forget he was grinding through a tour right before he died. And I ended up going in last minute, got tickets at the box office. They just happened to drop tickets before. I have this great photo about 20 feet away of Tom Petty giving one final goodbye wave to Boston that I'll never forget. I'll keep it forever. And it's just a great photo, but just another one lost. And anyways, I guess it's kind of a nice way to end it on the lives lost here over the couple of years.
Thank God the music will always be with us. And, you don't get over those losses, but the music lives on, thank God.
Nils Lofgren, you are the best. Weathered, tell people the best way how do you prefer people to get the album?
Well, I've got a great website, nilslofgren.com. There's tons of free music. There's tons of video. There's a page called Rockality where I write out a couple of interesting stories for you. I'm hoping to do more of that video-wise this year. But Weathered is a great double live album, maybe my favorite of all the ones I've made. Got the great Cindy Mizell singing her off, and Andy Newmark on drums, Kevin McCormick on bass, vocals, my brother Tommy on everything.
Nils Lofgren, I've been an admirer and a fan for many years. Thank you for being so sweet and taking all this time with us. I kept you for longer than I promised because I was enjoying it so much. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing it. Be safe to you and the family, all right?
Yeah, stay safe, everyone. Love to everybody, and thanks, Drew. I enjoyed it. You take care of yourself.
Give the dogs a treat for being good. They were great.
You got it. And shout out and love to Boston. You rock.
Appreciate
All
you.
right, take care. Thanks, man.
Well, how about that? Nils Lofgren. Thank you, Nils. Kept him far longer than I promised, as I mentioned. That tends to happen when I'm enjoying myself, as you've all noticed. So I'm going to leave it at that. What a show. Nils Lofgren, the legend himself right there. So that's a good way to end the week. Bye, everybody. Live from Drew's house. We will see you next time. Be safe. Wear the masks. And social distancing still in play and all that stuff. That's how we get out of this thing, all right? Be good, everybody. Bye-bye.